So glad that you're here this morning. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to share a story with you that is probably the most thrilling hour of my life. It involves being chained to a stranger named Brahm. Our text this morning is going to answer a question for us that you and I may not have known we should have been desperately asking our whole lives. The passage is Matthew chapter 10, the first couple verses. We crave meaning. You can have a job that pays well and has good benefits and job security and even like your supervisors, but if you don't feel like your job means something, there's just a sense of emptiness. If you don't feel like your work is going somewhere and your investment is changing the world for the better, we tend to feel like something's lacking in our work. It's the same way with our lives. We want our lives to count. We want our work to mean something. We want our investments to go somewhere. We crave purpose in life. I've spent a lot of time in different cultures and different reading and different explorations trying to find my purpose, trying to discover it so that I could really have that meaning and focus in life. And it was a real relief to me to realize I don't have to invent my purpose in life. It was given to me. Our main purpose in life involves a loving relationship with God, but our main working investment in life was given to us by Jesus, recorded at the end of Matthew's gospel. You may have heard this before. At the very last moment, Jesus gives his final words as recorded by Matthew, the big crescendo to the whole thing, and here's what he says. All authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Now go and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. So this is the big crescendo. This is the meaning and the purpose of our life's work. Go make disciples. The question is, the burning question is, how? How? My wife made me a pair of crocheted socks. I like to wear these around the house, and they're pretty comfortable. They're really warm. I don't know if you can see these extremely well, but they fit me just tailor-made for me. They're really pretty. I have no idea how to make crocheted socks or slippers, but somehow she took a ball of yarn and turned it into something like this, just for me. She's actually quite good at it by now. She's new to the task, but she just sits down and in one television program whips out a hat or just amazing creative things and potentials. I have no idea how to do any of that. If we followed Ronnie Kogler to work, I bet we could figure out how to build a house. That's what he does for a living. I bet he could teach us what kind of resources, what kind of people power, what kind of materials and instructions we would need to build a home. I have no idea how to do that. If we brought Dee Gushlak up on stage, I bet she could tell us how to make a quilt. In fact, I have one of her quilts that she's made with some others, and we wrap up in it every night. And it's really warm. I don't know how to do that. I bet if we brought Jake Cook on stage, he could tell us how to make an airplane, and I bet it would be pretty complex. But how do you make a disciple? How do you take a person, the raw material of a person, and turn that person into a devoted, mature follower of Jesus Christ? This is the critical question. If everything rides on this, our meaning, our purpose is to make disciples, how do we do it? And what's even seems more frustrating is this is at the end of the book. Jesus doesn't say, make disciples. Now, here's your 10-step process. Take notes. Here's the formula. It's at the end and then nothing. There's nothing else that he says. So where are the instructions, Jesus? How do we do this important task? Well, he was talking to his disciples, and he said to them, now you go make disciples. The disciples had just spent the last years of their lives learning with Jesus. So when he tells them to go make disciples, they are going to do what they saw him do. They are going to repeat not only his message, but his method of creating disciples. And so now we look back into the Gospel of Matthew as our disciple-making manual. And I want to read to you chapter 10, the first few verses. He called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to drive out evil spirits and to heal every disease and sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon and his brother Andrew, James son of Zebedee and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with instructions. Now, for the most thrilling hour of my life. My cousin Michael came over and spent the night. We got up early the next morning, got in the car, and drove out of town. The hour-long drive was filled, the car was filled with nervous energy, excitement, anxiety. And when we finally arrived, far, far out of town, we went in, they gave us a big stack of papers, and we began to fill them out. Lots of personal information, and we literally signed our life away. Potential of death, hold harmless, sign here. Okay, we're in. And then we got matched up. We got partnered up with a veteran, with a seasoned coach, and we went to the training room. Brahm was mine. He said, "Come here, you're with me." So we went into the training room for our training session. Now, have you ever been to a conference that you kind of snoozed through? You kicked back and you had to be there, or it was a work conference and you were just trying to make it through without falling asleep? This was not that kind of training session. This was every eye is on the speaker, every instruction we are paying attention, every move that they're making we are really focused on, because this training is about to have real consequence, immediate need. So we go through the training, learn what to do and how to do it. And then we walk out onto the field, and I'm walking behind Brahm, and we get on the airplane. Now, this isn't an airplane with seats that recline back and little tray tables that come down to hold your juice. This is an airplane with a single bench right up the middle of the plane, and you straddle it like this. And I'm sitting in front of my guy, Brahm, and we take off. Now, this is my first time in an airplane, by the way. It's my first flight. So we take off, and I'm watching my wrist altimeter climb up to 1,000 feet. I'm looking down outside, 2,000 feet. We get up to 5,000 feet, and he's talking to me. He's telling me what to do. 10,000 feet, we're getting close. I can hear him strapping in. He's connecting harnesses between me and him. He's tightening them up until he finally says we're ready to go. 12,000 feet, we're almost there. 13,000 feet, the jump door opens. The first couple gets out. They look out, they're gone. The next couple moves forward. We all slide forward on the bench. They get out to the edge, they're gone. We're about to be up. And all of a sudden, I just wonder if Brahm has made all those connections correctly. So I lunge forward. I just leap forward into the plane like this. I wanted to see if I could get away from him, because if I could get away from him in the plane, I probably could get away from him out of it. So I leap forward. He comes crashing into my back because we're securely connected. And I feel good. And I look back and say, sorry, I just had to know that you were there, because I'm trusting my life to this stranger. And if we go out, you've got the parachute on your back. I don't. So I just want to know that you're really with me. So we slide up to the front. It's our turn. We're at the edge of the plane. If you've had this experience, you know what I'm feeling right now. If you haven't, you can imagine. We're at the edge of the plane, jumping on 3. He's attached to my back. Ready? 1, 2, 3. free fall for 60 seconds, wind flying at my face, hitting my goggles and a little leather hat. We're just free falling. I don't remember if I was screaming or just flapping my cheeks in the wind, going like this, pretending we were Superman, the most thrilling 60 seconds probably of my life. And then parachute catches. And we look out over top the world and coast. He lands us so smoothly that I don't even grass stain my jumpsuit. And then he unhooks the harnesses. He releases us and he sends me away. You know what I did? Other than trying not to throw up, I went out and got 12 more people and said, listen, this is cool. We got to come and do this. And so we ended up taking a church group and having a skydiving Adventures in Faith outing, which our insurance company was not really thrilled about me for doing. But I just went and got more people. Jesus made disciples by picking, by saying, come and be with me. It's going to cost you everything. You've got to give your life up to me. And I know you're scared, and I know you don't really know how to do this, but I do. And we're going to strap in together. We're going to go through this together because I've been there, and I know where we're going. And you're going to be with me. We're going to experience this together. I'm going to teach you. And then when you are fully trained, I'm going to send you out to make more disciples. Come, learn, go. Come, learn, go. Come, learn, go. I want to look closely with you at the verses that we read, Matthew 10:1. It said, he called. He is Jesus. He called these people. He didn't have open enrollment. He didn't randomly walk by and ask if anyone wants to come and follow him. He specifically selected the people that God had for him to say, come, be part of my life and learn from me. Luke chapter 6 gives us even more insight into this. It says, Jesus went up on a mountain to pray, and he spent the whole night praying to God. Then in the morning, he came down from the mountain, and he selected his 12 disciples. Do you think there was any connection between the all-night prayer vigil and the important decision he made immediately afterward? It's as if it was such a critical moment that he just had to really hear from God. He had to be sure. He had to listen in and say, God, this is so important. The people that I select, I will devote my life to. They will be given the mission of God in the world. And who do you have for me to pick? Who am I supposed to say, you are my core team? Everything rides on this. He called. He called his 12 disciples. Now, if you read the book of Matthew, Jesus is with crowds all of the time. There are lots of people that want to be around Jesus. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. But he called 12. He spent his time with 12. He spent some time with the crowds, a lot of time, healing and preaching to the masses, but his life was invested into the 12. He chose the few to reach the many. In fact, even among the 12, there were his closest. He called his 12 disciples to him. He didn't call them to a Bible study. He didn't call them to a worship gathering. He didn't primarily call them to a set of teachings or a standard of religious conduct. He called them first and foremost to himself. We were having dinner the other day at our favorite Thai restaurant in town, and we were with some friends, and it was just before Easter, so we were talking about Easter, and we were talking about theology. And our waitress a girl that we had gotten to know fairly well by that point came. We'll call her Jenny. And so she was serving us, and I just said, so Jenny, we're talking about Easter and theology. Where did you grow up? What kind of religious background did you have? And so she was telling us she was a Buddhist from Thailand. And so we asked her about Buddhism. Tell us about the theology of Buddhism. What do you do? Where do you go? So we got talking about Easter. We got talking about the meaning of Easter and the meaning of Jesus and what he did and the difference between the call of Buddhism to a set of teachings and disciplines and Christianity, which is primarily not a call to a set of teachings, but a call to a person. He called his 12 disciples to himself. He was the curriculum. He was not only the Lord, he was the lesson. You want to know how to treat a foreigner who's living in sin? Jesus didn't say, well, I've got an article that I'd like to send a link to. You can read about how to treat that kind of person. No, he said, let's go through Samaria on our way because there's something important there. We're not going to skip around it. Let's stop here at the well and talk to this woman for a few minutes. You want to know how to treat that person? Watch what Jesus does. You want to know how to preach? Watch what Jesus says, how he interacts with the crowds. Listen to his words. He was right there. He was the lesson. It said he called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to do what? Cast out evil spirits, heal every kind of disease. In other words, he gave them authority to do what he had been doing. If we look at Matthew chapter 4, Jesus calls his first disciples, and then immediately after that, it says he was out with the people, preaching the kingdom of God, healing every disease, casting out evil spirits. And then in Matthew chapter 9, right before the text that we're looking at, it says, Jesus went out preaching the kingdom of God, healing people of their disease and illness, casting out evil spirits. In other words, he demonstrated, then he delegated. The things that you've seen me do, now you have the authority to do. This is true in many sectors of life. It's kind of the Jedi principle is what I call it. That's not an original term. You have a Padawan learner. Obi-Wan Kenobi takes on Anakin, spends years of his life devoted to this student learner. Watch what I do. Go on the missions with me. Let's have the adventures together. You're not ultimately responsible. Your main task is just to learn from what I'm doing. And then eventually, after years of investment, you are ready to face the trials, and I will send you out to find another learner. This principle applies in business. It applies in trade. If you want to be a plumber, you don't just read a book. You spend time with a master plumber. If you want to be a doctor, you don't just go to school. You've got to get into the surgery room. You've got to get into the clinic. You've got to be around a veteran doctor that can help you know how to treat patients, how to handle sickness. Could you imagine a driver's ed school that didn't involve driving? A training program that never got a kid in the car? Just sit in a classroom, listen, watch scary videos about crashes, take a written test, and then you get your driver's license. Wouldn't that be insane? You have to get them in the car. You have to put them in the passenger seat and say, listen, you watch, I'll drive. You just watch, because you need to pay attention. Okay, see how I stopped at the stop sign and didn't do a rolling through stop? That's what you need to do. And then eventually, you switch. They are in the driver's seat. You are in the passenger seat. And if you can, you're in one of those driver's ed cars that has the brake on your side. So anytime they get going a little fast, you can slow it down. You drive. I'll kind of guide and drive with you and make sure we don't crash. And eventually, after you're ready, you drive by yourself. And then you get good, and eventually, you teach your kids to drive. Jesus gave them authority to do what he was already doing. He demonstrated, then delegated. The key is close proximity. You have to learn strapped into each other's lives, life to life, walking together. I would challenge you to think of anything that you can do well that you didn't have someone show you and demonstrate how to do it. He gave them authority to do what he'd already been doing in front of them. And then it says, these are the names of the 12 apostles. In verse 1, Matthew called them the 12 disciples, learners, students, followers. Then he says, these are the names of the 12 apostles, messengers, sent ones, ambassadors. This is the only time Matthew uses this word in his gospel. This is the name of the 12 apostles that Jesus has now shown. He's called them to himself. They have seen him do all of the work, and they know how to do it because they've been with him. And now he sends them out to go and make a difference in the world. A few weeks ago, we talked about the fact that God's mission is people, and his method is people. If you want to be about investing into your life's purpose, into making disciples, this is how. Come, learn, go. It's so simple and so highly neglected. We can donate time and money. We can study the Bible till we're blue in the face. We can program ministries for every single person. We can attend worship services. But we can't neglect how to make disciples. Come, learn, and go. I would be so disappointed if you came up to me this morning after the service and said, "Man, Pastor, great message," and didn't do anything this week to make a disciple. I'd much rather you say, "Man, Pastor, I'm so sorry, I fell asleep after the skydiving story. What was the message about again?" I'd much rather you say that than say, "Wow, what a great message, but I'm not going to do anything about it this week." The key is to begin taking practical steps, to begin inviting people into our lives, into closer proximity, to find ways to make our neighbors have an invitation into our homes, to find opportunities to spend time with coworkers outside of the job environment so that we can talk about things that are more than just job, more than just task. We can talk about life. To find ways to open up conversations with our relatives and bring them closer into our lives, to create windows of opportunity to say, "Come," to the people that God gives us. I want you to be close to my life. I want you to see how I react at the grocery store when I can't find what I'm looking for. I want you to see how we listen to our server at the restaurant and care about her and love her and find ways to bring up meaningful spiritual conversation. I want you to see how I treat my spouse and how I talk to my kids and how I care for my aging parents. I want you to see how I deal with stress and how I disappear for 20 or 30 minutes in the mornings because I just need to spend time with God before anyone else. I want you to see my own weaknesses and my own desperate need for God's grace on a daily basis. And the only way you're going to see that is if we are close. If we're walking life together. My challenge for you this week is simply this. Pray. Pray that God will show you one person to whom you can say, come. Let's learn together, so that you can help that person become a mature and devoted disciple of Jesus Christ.